Hi, I'm Gerard Ratnam. Joining me today are three people with three different insights into the current flood situation. We'll be joined by Datuk Wira Dr. Haji Ameer Ali Mydin, the Managing Director of Mydin, who has recently halalkan the looting that happened in Mydin Sri MUDA. What's that mean? We'll come back and share that with you. I'll also be joined by flood risk specialist Dr. Nurul Ashikin Mabahwi on how we can solve and prevent floods from happening again. Also on the show, Afriena Shaqira, Deputy Head of MUDA Kota, joins us from on the ground. We hear that these young people are doing some really good work out there. And Nurul Abdullah will be chiming in time and again from his office in the Federal Capital to keep us up to speed, always from a crisis management perspective. Welcome to Wednesday's edition of The Brief. Okay, we start with this. We begin with an important announcement. The MBSA is looking for medical volunteers. I think if we have the super, we can play the super now, from the public, including from relevant agencies and NGOs to help flood victims, especially in Taman Sri MUDA or the Taman Sri MUDA area. All you need to do is contact Puan Rohaizat Muhammad Nordin at 012-646 3897 for more information. I'm going to read it out to you once again. 012-646-3897. Well, they're looking for people or volunteers from the public, including from relevant agencies and NGOs to help flood victims. So please call Puan Rohaizat as soon as possible. In the meantime, my first guest is Datuk Wira Dr. Ameer Ali Mydin, the Managing Director of Mydin Muhammad Holdings Berhad. I guess at this point, there's no need for an introduction to the topic. Datuk, thank you for doing this. I'd like to begin with your thoughts surrounding the flood situation in the country. Datuk?
Thank you, Gerard. Thank you. I think basically, we are seeing some kind of light end of the tunnel. I mean, water is receding in many places. We see Malaysians, of course, as usual, raising up to the challenge. NGOs are going down there to the ground to help where possible. We see a lot of NGOs buying goods from Mydin, actually. So we see young people, we see old people, whether they're NGOs or they're individuals trying to support where they can. I think the most important thing here is that yes, the help is going down there, and what we need actually is a central command where the right people get the things. I mean, on the ground, you find that there could be more challenges. I've been down once or twice, and I see what's happening on the ground. I think this is important. And of course, my next thing is that situation like this is not something that happens every day. So let's not start the blame game. Let's not politicize this kind of situation. Let's just be clear of our objective to help people. Let's all be together here and just to help people. I think that's a thing. I think you will find a lot of things happening. There's going to be supply chain challenges. I mean, there's going to be lack of goods because factories are affected, factories are closed. We are running short of a lot of things, because massive demand. But this supply chain issue is not only flood related because it's a COVID-19 kind of story. So this has been happening for some time. Prices are going up obviously because of short of supply. So this is going to happen. But the most important thing here is that next wave is coming. That's why we're here. Let's be more prepared than we were before. I think this is the main thing here.
Dato, I'd like to move into one of the statements you've made. I know the line's pretty bad, but I hope we still have Dato online. You made a statement in the news a couple of days ago, and it pleasantly took all of us by surprise. Basically, I don't know how to put this in English, but I'm going to mix my English and Malay here. You halalkan what was taken. What did you? Why did you do what you do, or what you did?
I think basically when I got the news that people were breaking into one of my stores in Taman Sri MUDA, I mean, the initial reaction, just like any human being, would be anger, frustration. Why is this happening? Where is the law enforcement? This is our normal human reaction. But when you see what is happening down the ground, then you sit down, you think through why they're doing this. I mean, people just don't do things. Of course, there are people, opportunists who will take and might just go in to vandalize the shop. But there were people who were taking maybe because they are hungry. And I mean, as a Muslim, for that matter, any religion, when they take things, sometimes you notice in the video, some people are even shy, hiding their faces to take something. I saw one video, they were just one guy only taking one pack of milk. Seriously, So maybe there's more to this than just vandalism here. So the best thing that we should do is that in times like this, I took the initiative that that we should halalkan, so that the people who have taken this thing, they are not burdened by this thing that this is a right or wrong, and what I have done, is it the right thing I did? So let's in times of like this, let's forgive and forget. The more important is people got what they want. The authorities have been quite helpful. Our OCPD, I think Tuan Baha had been very helpful, been sending people down there. But of course, priority for the police is to help the flood victims. So they'll have to manage this. I'm told that people have been caught, but for many reasons. So vandalism is of course wrong, but for people who are taking things when they are hungry, I think we should allow them. I mean, right. The shop is open; people are just going and taking what they like. Yeah.
Right, that's really good of you and our friends at Mydin for doing what you've done, and also for just coming out and saying, look, whatever's happened has happened. We just take it in our stride and move forward. Now, you're always looking at what you can do to help society, and I've known you, I've been following you personally, and I know that this is one of the things you like doing. See what's happening in society and see where you can help out. What is your team planning for the given situation that we're in right now, moving forward?
I think more important for us, because we are in a supply chain. I mean, I think let the right people do the right thing. We do what we do, I think, what we are good at. More important for us is to get the goods in our stores so people can pick up those goods and use it. I think this is what the main thing we should be doing. I mean, we are having meetings, twice a day to ensure the supply chain is sorted out and goods get to our stores so people can buy. Unbelievably, trailers and trailers are coming to my warehouse here and even in Subang Jaya, picking up goods to be delivered. I think this is what more important, and we are even planning ahead, making sure that next month we have enough supply and the month after, because I don't think this is going to be over so soon, because flood is flood. When water goes down, the cleaning process, the rebuilding process is really, really massive. I really hope that the government will step in a bit more. Giving 500 ringgit, 1,000 ringgit, well, thank you very much. I'm sure it helps people, but money is never enough, seriously. But things have been destroyed, and it's a pity. People were just trying to get back on their feet after the COVID-19 pandemic, and this is what we call in Malay, sudah jatuh di timpa tangga. But God has His reason. Let's persevere. I'm sure we can make it. As Malaysians, sure boleh. Malaysia boleh.
Yep. Malaysia boleh, that's for sure. Thank you for doing this, Datuk Wira, Dr. Ameer Ali Mydin, the Managing Director of Mydin Muhammad Holdings Berhad. Thank you very much, Datuk. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for what you're doing for the nation. Nurdin Abdullah joins us at this point. He's our usual suspect, our crisis management guy. He's on with us. Nurdin, thank you very much for taking time off once again. It's been a very busy week for you, this being a week riddled with crisis management issues. Now, you've just heard our interview with Datuk Wira. Your thoughts on what he had to say with regards to the whole Mydin issue a couple of days ago?
Well, firstly, I want to say it's an incredibly mature act of Datuk Wira to halalkan these acts. And I think he was very, very mature in his approach and very societally driven. He realized that people were hungry and people needed food. And I think this is something that in a sense, those people were very lucky they went into Mydin and not another shop. So I think this is one thing that we've not seen in Malaysia before. We've not seen it even on an international basis. So I think congratulations to Datuk Wira and his team. Now, the other thing from a crisis management perspective, and this is something that I think that has come out of the last few days, is we've realized how important the supply chain is, especially in terms of getting food and water. And really from day one of this flooding, I keep talking about water because people can survive 3 days without food.
I have to
but
stop you here, brother, because you always, for the few years I've worked with you, you've always been talking about food security and water. This has always been one of the priorities on the top of your list when you appear on TV all the time. Now, getting into what you're talking about, you talk about food security and a supply chain. Now, before we even get to the supply chain, let's talk about food security at this point, given the fact that we are still running the course of a pandemic, and this is compounded by the fact that we are now inundated with water in certain parts of the country.
Exactly. And when you start to talk about food security and resilience during a crisis, you need to start to build into the supply chain redundancies. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of companies over the last few days not being able to supply their outlets, whether they're restaurants, restaurant chains. So that has come because of where some of the warehousing is and the links to the supply routes in terms of the roads and rail and other forms of transport. So this is something that this crisis has really brought to light. And I think what we've seen, especially yesterday, I think one of the NGOs was talking about they need four-wheel drives. They need people with four-wheel drives to get to the people. So now we're starting to realize that the crisis response, yes, the component, which is the government agencies, the authorities, but now there's a what we call a 1.5 track or 1.5, which is the corporate entities that have the supply chains need to be geared up. And I think this is one area that, looking at the rest of this flood season and flood seasons moving forward, there needs to be better coordination with this area. I think this is something that is a possible area of building resilience without having to spend a lot of money on infrastructure.
Nurul, we have to take another break. When we come back, though, and when I get back to you after speaking to Dr. Nurul Ashikin, we're going to talk about what the Prime Minister had to say. He has admitted about delays and other weaknesses in rescue efforts, but he said that people shouldn't be pointing fingers at this point. I'm just going to read that out to you. Now joining me on the line is Dr. Nurul Ashikin Mabahwi. She's a flood risk specialist. She's also heavily involved in politics, but we're not going to be talking about politics today. Let's just get into it. Doctor, thank you very much for taking time to be with us. We hear that the next step is irrigation, irrigating all the water out of the affected areas. How do we do this? So now what we want to do is remove water from areas like Sri MUDA or pump water out. What are processes for something like this?
Okay. We call it as trapped water, or in Malay we call it as air termenung. And as for now,
air termenung, Okay.
Air termenung, yeah. In Malay we call it as air termenung. And for now, the Department of Irrigation and Drainage Malaysia will drill the existing levee at the area, I think near Sungai Klang, to drain the water out. And actually that's the fastest way we can do, which is to drill and pump the water out. But it is also important to rebuild the levee since they already drill it. And in this case, they will pump the water to Sungai Klang based on what I read in the news. But we need to be extra careful in deciding the channel so that it will not lead to another flood incident. Because pumping and drilling must be coupled with checking the river capacity, so whether it can still contain the excess water. But I believe the ID, the government already made their own calculation for that.
Wait, okay, let's backtrack a little bit because I couldn't quite hear you there. So you said you have to pack the river, something to that effect. What were you saying? Can you please repeat that for us?
Sorry, again?
Okay, you're talking something about, you were saying something about packing the river or the banks of the river. Can you please walk us through that again?
Oh yeah, because in order for them to drill and pump the water out to the Sungai Klang, so they need to drill the levee. I mean the benting banjir, so that they will need to drill something and pump the water out. But in order to do that, they need to check the river capacity so that it will not lead to another incident along Sungai Klang. But this is a very scientific calculation for that. But I believe the relevant agency, which is this will be handled by the Department of Irrigation and Drainage Malaysia. So I believe that they already make their own calculation whether the embankment, the benting banjir can can be drilled out and whether the river can cope with the excess water that will be pumped out to the Sungai Kelang.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking into the future or looking into our immediate future, we know we need to work on our infrastructure to change things. What can we do so things like this, I think it will happen again, but to minimize the risk of housing estates and where people are living, or the risk of flooding in these areas, what can we do? We've come so far with technology and whatever else we're doing, but we still have a little problem with handling something like this. So infrastructurally, what should be done?
If we talk about infrastructure in terms of mitigation, means we are talking about the structural measures to prevent the flood. And I believe that it's about time for us in Malaysia to change our method in managing flood risk. And I would like to suggest our country to invest big in developing the high standard levy. Or in Japan, they call it super levy. Or in Malaysia, maybe we can call it benteng banjir tinggi, the high quality standard of high standard levy. It's very different than the current conventional levy that we use in Malaysia. But in order to develop this, it must be coupled with urban redevelopment project or new development. And this is the loophole in our country at the moment, because we detach urban planning with flood risk management. And in order to develop the high standard levy, the current technology, it will definitely cost Malaysia a lot, but we will use technology. It's a big scale levy, big scale benteng banjir, wide of around 300 meters, height of 10 meters. But it comes with the ground technology or stability to prevent landslide. Because in Malaysia, it is quite common to have landslide after flood. So I think at the moment, high standard levy is something that Malaysia can look into. But of course, we need a proper research to study whether we can adapt this technology in Malaysia or not. But I highly recommend our government to look into that. And I think that in terms of infrastructure, we also need to reform our drainage system in Malaysia. In order to manage our flood risk, we need integrated drainage system. But we must consider climate change in the assessment in order for us to reform our...
Stop you here. I have to stop you here because you're talking about an integrated drainage system. So, kepada kita yang tak faham, for those of us who don't understand drainage systems, what's an integrated drainage system? Saying in Kuala Lumpur lah, what can be a better integrated drainage system within KL or the federal capital?
Mm-hmm. When I did my study in terms of flood risk management in Malaysia, so I went to government offices in Malaysia, and I requested a map that I can see whether we have an integrated, or in another word, maybe bahasa lebih mudah, we can connected kot jaringan perpalitan yang berpadu, that every drainage system is connected to each other, and we properly designed and planned the drainage system, etc. Area that we have flash flood or etc., we can properly channel to the right. So that.
Right. Doc, we seem to be having a connection with you. I know you're in Taman Sri Muda right now, and there seems to be connectivity problems for people or with people that we're calling within Taman Sri Muda. We'll try to get back to you. In the meantime, I'd like to bring Nordin Abdullah back in to just try to understand or just get a better context in what Dr. Nurul Ashikin was saying a while ago. Nordin, thank you very much for staying on with us. Now, you heard Dr. Nurul talk about an integrated drainage system within the city. Can you give us a picture? Okay, can you storytell this to us as to what it should look like, what we should envision in our heads as citizens of the country? It's easy to say holistic, integrated, so on and so forth. But what are we actually talking about here?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot to unpack. And of course, Dr. Nurul is one of the leading experts in this area. But for me, one of the things that I want to see is to be able to see the flood maps. And now with current housing, when we see the growth of Kuala Lumpur over the last 10 years, we're talking about not just Kuala Lumpur, we're talking about the city of Greater Kuala Lumpur. So now you'll see a population growth. With that population growth, we will see people living in areas that weren't weren't previously populated. So the question is, where are the flood maps? So then you can start to build backwards using what we call GIS, or Geographic Information Systems. So you can start to look at the geography of the area. You can start to look at the current infrastructure that's in the area, and then you can start to say, well, what is the infrastructure that we now need to build? And I think Dr. Nurul was talking about the high value levies, or the high quality levies that will be able to deal with the increase of water flow that comes down through the Klang Valley. And I think you can see some of this footage here. And I'm hoping they'll be able to bring out some footage where you can see one of the rivers. You'll see that it was actually the river that overflowed into the housing area, and some of those areas in Shah Alam, where you realize that perhaps that's a new area that, and we don't know from a citizen's perspective. When you go and purchase property in those areas, what are the flood risks? Because some of these things happened, before it was a housing area. So that living memory is not there. So now you have to go back to, and we keep talking about this idea of, you have to have data-driven information and evidence-based policy making and rollout in that sense. So from a crisis management perspective, I know you're going to cut me off here, but from a crisis management perspective, you've got to set...
I was not going to cut you off, Nurdin. I was never going to cut you off. It's Gerard Ratnam.
I know. But when you understand those...
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
When you start to understand that this is a major threat to lives and livelihoods, and I think these two words have become etched in our memory forever because of COVID-19. We've kind of put other crises on the back burner, and floods, whether it's here in Kuala Lumpur, which hasn't happened for a while, or Perak or Kelantan or Kedah or whichever place, it's going to continue to happen. So bigger populations, more high-value assets in flood-related areas means it's a bigger threat to the economic future of the country. So we need to start to invest in that infrastructure.
Right. So, very quickly, we've got 30 seconds before we take a break, or the studio director is going to start screaming into my ear. But everyone's talking about Japan and how Japan has an excellent drainage system. Can you just sum this up for us as to, what is an excellent drainage system?
Well, first, a drainage system that meets the objective, and where the biggest infrastructure developments in Japan are definitely in the cities, and of course Tokyo has a very famous flood mitigation project that spent billions on that. Now, the question is, where do we need to spend the most, and where do we need to spend first? And when you start to think of that, is like, where are the threats coming to, and what are the mitigations that need to be done? So there will be very expensive mitigations, and then there will be simple mitigations that we can do. So this is going to take a more integrated approach and a deeper stakeholder understanding, and spending time thinking about it and getting the right minds around the problem. So I think that's going to be the future of this crisis.
We're now joined by Afriena Shaqira Sariff, the Deputy Head of MUDA Kota Raja, to walk us through what is happening on the ground. Afriena, give us a sense of what's happening there. How has the situation evolved in the past 3 days? Afriena?
Thank you very much, Gerard. So currently my team and I are at MUDA. We are trying to push input bags, fresh water and dry clothes in by boat, since the water level inside are still quite deep. But the water level around the roundabout of MUDA have receded. There are some families still stranded up on their roof. There are also many NGOs, CUDM, Bomber, JPAM, ATM, NADMA, and all the authorities are over here too. But they are not allowing us to get in because it's very dangerous. So only the authorities have the access. So next we'll move towards the relief center in SKT Emerald. It's oversupply with food. So to those who want to donate, please keep checking. It is starting to be a waste. Instead, we need more essential items such as sanitary pads.
Okay, I'm going to stop you here, Afriena. Let's just go back to make that message clear. So a lot of people are sending food, as we do in Malaysia. Makan first. Everyone needs to eat. It's our thing.
Yes.
Now, so what you're saying is that we are sending too much food at this point and food is being wasted.
Yes, correct.
Right. So food is being wasted. Now, what are the list of things needed? You said essential items. What
Okay, example, sanitary pads,
top 10, yeah.
soap, and toothbrushes. Or maybe mask, since it's still in the pandemic. We are still in pandemic.
Right. So other than that, what can people do to help? What else can people do? A lot of us want to volunteer. Over the weekend, we want to go do some cleaning. But we also know that KJ has also in a way said, be careful, go there, help, but be careful, or at least that's the message coming from the Ministry of Health, to always maintain social distancing, so on and so forth. What can people do? So the weekend is fast approaching. It's Christmas, and I think this time around people want to go out and help. What can we do?
Okay, so currently we are preparing for post-flood cleanup. We are gathering all the volunteers that have registered through Mari Bantu Pasca Banjir platform, and we are starting to divide them into groups and also areas. But the great news is we have received over 3,000 volunteers registration, and it is still keep coming in. So we are going to divide them and arrange them accordingly and send out to the areas to clean up.
Right. So, Afriena, we're going to go off script for a while. I don't want you to look at what you've written there to give us this information. I'd like to thank you for that. But this is about a story of us as a family, Keluarga Malaysia, as a people, okay?
Yeah.
A lot of heartwarming stories have happened in the past week. We saw a lot of heart-wrenching stories, but equally, we saw an influx of a number of heartwarming stories. Malaysians going out there, tak kira bangsa, tak kira agama, everyone's out there doing what they have to do. What have you seen that has touched you now that you're on the ground? I'm sure you've seen so many things happen, and you've seen things that probably made you tear also. Give us a story if you have one.
Okay, what touches me the most is the volunteers help each other in terms of emotional support.
Mm-hmm.
And also,
so when you say, please go on. Don't let me stop you, please. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. So also, since earlier they need dry clothes, right? So it keeps coming. So the people here are enough with support that they need.
Mm-hmm. And you said emotional support. A lot of people, they can't handle what they're seeing. Why is it that they need emotional support?
Okay, so in MUDA it was terribly affected earlier in past few days. So the time that we reached there, past 2 days, there was a dead body of an unknown man and later a child. Then we saw people were crying, panicking, screaming for help. And they also told us they did not eat for about 2-3 days. So that's what saddens me most.
Mm-hmm. You know what? We're all very proud of you, and we're always by our phones waiting for people like you to call and give us as much information as you can. We are here to do our bit, and we hope that our little bit does help in putting information out there just so everyone's in the know of what's happening. What is your... As a young Malaysian doing a lot of work, you're involved in a lot of things, very societal in that sense. What is your message to Malaysia, to all of us?
Okay. So first and foremost, a billion thanks couldn't be enough to our MUDA Kota Raja Committee and to all Malaysians who has contributed in helping with the flood victims. Also, the command center of Parti MUDA has been very well managed by Parti MUDA HQ, MUDA Selangor, and of course, MUDA Kota Raja HIC of Parlimen Aravin Shanmugavelu. So I am very happy that we are all strongly united.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to do. We need to come together and we need to unite. Thank you very much, Afriena, for doing this for us. Afriena Shaqira Sariff, who is so on the ground currently doing some work, or rather not some work, but a lot of work helping out those who are in need right now. We bring Nurdin Abdullah back in for this. Nurdin, I'm feeling a bit emotional right now, and I'm sure you feel it too. That semangat Malaysia, that Keluarga Malaysia coming out together and doing what we need to do. Whether we have 10 ringgit in the pocket or 100 ringgit in the pocket, everyone puts his or her hand in the pocket, knowing full well that someone out there needs help at this point. So you've just heard Afriena say what she had to say about what's going on the ground. She also touched on emotional support. From a crisis management perspective, emotional support, what can we do? What's the 101 for crisis management, or rather helping someone emotionally and crisis managing this?
Well, first of all, Gerard, I want to reiterate what you said earlier, and thank Afriena and all the people who are down on the ground or in the mud, as we say. You know, it's really something, you know, where we are sitting here in very comfortable office spaces and enjoying aircon, but they're out in the heat and the smell of it. And you know, I did have a visit to some places this morning, you know, where the waters has receded. But when it comes to emotional support, and we can't underestimate, you know, you look at these people, they're actually smiling and they're happy. And, you know, I think this is part of it. And you hear in the voices of our other guests today, you can hear actually they're very tired. The reason why they're physically and mentally tired is because they've been working so hard, probably nonstop for the last 3 days. And that builds up and that has a toll on people. So for me, when it comes to dealing with victims, I think what's most important is listening, and listening to people and understanding they've just lost everything. And the one thing that struck me this morning when I saw some of the damage was just everything was outside in front of people's houses. You know, their mattresses, their furniture, a whole bunch of stuff that's been destroyed. So you're dealing with a group of people who have just lost everything from their houses. So it's hard to comprehend, and also their cars, you know, and you're seeing the footage here. So it's hard to comprehend the mental state of mind that those people are in. So when it comes to that, the key thing is actually to listen and give them a chance to speak. And I think that is really from a counseling perspective, not necessarily a crisis management perspective. We haven't solved any of those major problems, but actually just listening sometimes is solving a problem. So I think this is where I think the you know, again, we keep talking about what needs to go into a crisis response for these floods. One of those things is how do people communicate the pain that they've been going through and deal with it in a way that is meaningful, and then we start to chart a future for them, because they've just seen their entire present being destroyed. And I think that is going to be the difficult part, because charting a future and dealing with the next 1 week, the next 1 month, and the next 1 year is actually the harder part than dealing with the water in your lounge room right now.
Nurul, let's go back to what the Prime Minister said, we talked about this before. I just want to go through this again. So he says that we need to focus on helping victims and cleaning up, because he also admitted that there were delays and other weaknesses to rescue efforts in Selangor, but also added that the responsibility lies on everyone to ensure that this does not occur. In the meantime, this is what NADMA is saying. They said that there is no issue of the agency being late in coordinating the rescue of flood victims, and all relevant agencies had apparently been assigned in advance. So they also denied a media report claiming that NADMA was reluctant to get the Malaysian Armed Forces involved in relief efforts. And I know we were talking about the Armed Forces coming in. We had a little bit of a debate, me, you, and Jessy, you and I, and we were talking about this. So your thoughts on what the Prime Minister had to say and what NADMA is saying?
Well, firstly, to the Prime Minister, of course, there's going to be gaps in any crisis response. And it's very easy to point out the gaps. But one thing the Prime Minister didn't try to do is sugarcoat it. And I think that is a sign of respect to the people who are on the ground and who are impacted. The fact that he's said that, yes, there are gaps, now you can start to fill those gaps. And what I've seen over the last few days is agencies, communities, and volunteers have all started to fill those gaps. So it may have been a gap for a while, but didn't stay a gap for very long. The other thing when it comes and the forces, I was a few years ago before COVID-19, I was fortunate enough to be in one of the flood briefings that happened several months before the flood season in Malaysia. and it's a room full of a lot of people and a lot of agencies and a lot of NGOs. So every year, NADMA holds these briefings with stakeholders. So they've been doing this for a while. They do know what they're doing. Of course, when it comes to coordination issues, when it comes to on the ground issues, I always come back to, my favorite saying is Mike Tyson. And everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And this is the first rule of crisis management. You can have as many plans as you want, but you're going to get punched in the face. It's whether you can recover from that punch in the face and then continue with the fight. And I think what we've seen in the last few days, yes, we got hit in the face, a bit of a wobble, but then boom, we're there, we're still in the fight, and people are solving those problems right now.
Very quickly, in business, I think this is good news. The ringgit has strengthened slightly against the US dollar from yesterday's levels. $1 is currently worth slightly below 4 ringgit 21, and the ringgit was apparently traded mostly higher against a basket of other major currencies. So I think that's a brief respite with regards to good news for us. Our ringgit's doing okay. On the business front, what are your thoughts with Malaysian businesses now, given the fact that the pandemic has been compounded by the torrential rains?
Well, excuse me, Gerard. One of the things I would like to look at is no, it's not that bad. We're okay. I think yes, there's going to be a couple of days of direct supply chain interruption in the Klang Valley. Klang Valley, of course, is one of the key components of the Malaysian economy, but it's not the only component. So exports are still happening through ports in Penang and Johor and Sabah and Sarawak. So that, and also palm oil, it's not going to be heavily impacted by floods, at least at the plantation level. So when you start to look at the Malaysian economy as starting to gear up to recover, perhaps some of the retail sector, I noticed some of the retail outlets in the Klang Valley were a little bit quiet over the last couple of days, probably because people are busy helping other people in floods. So I think the economy is going to be okay.
With that, thank you very much, Nurdin. We'll be checking in with you once again tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thanks for this, my friend. Nurdin Abdullah there joining us on the crisis brief, of course, which happens during the brief at 2 p.m. from Monday to Thursday, and on Friday it's at 3 p.m. Now, what's trending on Twitter for the past few days? Twitter has been instrumental in coordinating relief efforts for the flood victims. Hashtag Banjir 2021 and hashtag Kita Jaga Kita are trending as people reach out for help. Now, there's a lot of fake news circulating on your family WhatsApps. Before you agree with something or before you get upset with something, please check, verify the news. A lot of old photos coming back to life again and taking advantage of the situation we are in. We don't want to exacerbate or worsen the situation. Please do what you need to do. Verify your news before you send it out to someone else. In the meantime, you have a great day ahead. I'm Gerard, Ratnam signing out. I'll be back hopefully on Friday with Jessy Chahal to give you a little bit of an insight as to what's happening with the news here in Malaysia. You have a great day ahead and stay safe, Malaysia.